Today on Inside Utah Politics, early childhood education. The first 5 years of life are crucial for brain development. How you can learn all about the available resources to help build a strong foundation for your child. Plus, state lawmakers taking another shot at eliminating straight party voting in Utah. Could this be the year the bipartisan bill crosses the finish line? We have both sides of the debate.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. Tomorrow at the state capitol, local advocacy groups are inviting parents to learn more about early childhood education. It's all part of Early Childhood Day on the Hill, and it runs from 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Several agencies will be on hand to discuss resources and answer questions. They'll also have information on how to engage your local representatives. We caught up with Senate President Stuart Adams and Senator Luz Escamilla at the Capitol to discuss the issue. Glad to have both of you with us for a very important conversation. We're talking early childhood development this morning. One stat I want to throw out to start off, 90% of a child's brain develops within the first 5 years of life. So that's kind of the basis of this conversation we're having. Early Childhood Day on the Hill. Both of you are going to be participating in that. Let's start off by talking about why this is such an important issue to you. President, let's start with you.
Well, again, it's exciting to have parents come up here, not only to see the Capitol and participate what we're doing, it's actually to learn from those that help early childhood development. There's so many opportunities for parents now with all the online events and all the other educational opportunities. It'll be great to have them up here and to be able to participate and to be able to share ideas with them.
Senator Escamilla.
As a mom of two under the age of 5, this is obviously something that I hold very dear to my heart. It's critical that parents get empowered to make decisions for their children, and empower, in order to empower them, we need information. That's what this day is going to make it happen, and they're going to be here at the Hill, learning also about the many things that we're talking at the legislature regarding early childhood education and development. We need to invest. The return investment is high when we start at a young age for our children. And I like that this is a bipartisan effort, making sure kids get access to high quality early childhood education.
That's why I wanted to have the both of you on, is to show the bipartisan nature of this. You guys both have personal stories. Tell us about those. It's a grandson for you, President.
Well, I have 15 and a half grandchildren and a grandson that actually participated in an early education system called Upstart. And it's a great system because what happens is they do it at home. And not only does my grandson get the ability to learn how to be on the computer and have that interaction with the computer, but it actually helps him with my daughter and my son-in-law to be able to learn how to interact with each other as they learn. And it's been a phenomenal experience. He entered kindergarten and way ahead of his school. In fact, he tested extremely well. But more than testing well, more than learning how to do math and to actually do reading, it built his self-esteem, and he feels like he can participate, and I think he feels like he's smart, which is a big deal.
All of this before starting kindergarten, so that foundation built up to that point. Senator Escamilla, your daughter.
Yes, so Sol, it's participating actually currently on the Upstart 4-year-old program, so it's very critical to clarify that it's for 4-year-olds. And if you think about it, we don't have universal preschool in Utah. So for many of our children, this is the only program that we have in place that is really addressing literacy, reading, and math and science. And it's been truly a life-changing for her because she comes with some speech delayed issues, and it has completely changed the dynamic because she's able to do it personally with a computer at her pace and to test her, the ability to do pronunciation and wording. It has been really interesting to see how it's shifting completely her ability to communicate better.
I want to go back to a thought. Oh, did you have something you wanted to
So Upstart started actually with low to moderate income families and in English learner families. And now we've expanded as a state for almost all kids. So it's really kind of interesting to see how they've evolved. And when they started, we actually put an independent evaluator on the Upstart program to find out what results we would have. And we found that their learning gains far exceed any other pre-K program. And they actually track the kids into the 3rd and 4th grades, and they see those learning gains continue on with them. So it not only helps them prepare for kindergarten, but it stays with them throughout their life. And I think as they prepare well and learn early, as you mentioned, I think it actually sets them on the right course to be able to have a great experience in our schools and education.
Yeah, I can't help but think back to that very thought. You know, we talk about education and challenges and being educated, but it really starts at a young age, and you're seeing that firsthand with your daughter.
Absolutely, and actually I will say it starts with prenatal care. And you know, I've been very lucky to have the support of both Republicans and Democrats with, you know, addressing early childhood education at a 0 age with babies, and how do we how do we help parents, empower them with information to be better parents. Upstart has that component as well, and I'll mention that it's not only that computer and the child, the parents engage. And there's almost like a case manager that's helping you as a parent navigate the system, because it requires commitment. And that's one thing that I think parents will learn if they come here, you know, to this program.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about barriers and challenges that Utah families face. Maybe Senator Escamilla, let's start with you on that one. When it comes to being able to access this and get their children involved.
So the reality is we have what we call social determinants of health. Those social determinants really make a difference and almost tells you the outcome of a child based on income, the zip code they're growing, whether they have transportation, air quality, health. So if you have programs that allow parents to help them through this process, so that's why the case management is critical. Programs that succeed are programs that have the interaction with parents and they're helping them navigate this, because maybe those parents have never even had a chance to access some of these programs. So by teaching them how to get their kids to succeed is really, it's critical. Parents are critical in this whole equation, and many families are struggling with 2 or 3 jobs just to make it. So if we have tools, and in this case, some technology are critical for those type of tools that we're looking for. They will never replace teachers, you know, clearly, but it helps it make it easier for those kids that are already coming back with a disadvantage, whether it's based on their income. You know, we've had kids entering 1st grade or kindergarten, they've never opened a book. They open them backwards, right? By the time they already are behind, you know, there's already that achievement gap starting on kindergarten. We need to close that gap at that early age.
Yeah, no, oh, go ahead.
So yeah, with the Upstart program, it's free. And I think people need to understand that. We actually provide it for them. Upstart will provide, if they don't have a computer, they'll provide their computer for them, they'll get their internet. So it's actually free. And again, they have a tutor that helps the kids and actually helps the parents help the child. So it actually builds that interaction again. So the barrier to entry is very low, obviously free. But also the cost of the state is low, is very low, a few $100s, when regular pre-K, brick and mortar pre-K can actually cost the state, if we were to go that way, thousands of dollars per child.
No doubt about it, parents play a key role, but government also plays a role here. So let's shift into that. I read your op-ed that you wrote in the Deseret News. You talked about yourself being a grandfather, a father, and you are a mother. Almost everyone in the state legislature fills that role in some way or another. However, what can government do to help push this along and make sure we're really focusing on this early childhood development?
And again, I think it's funding. We've tried to fund Upstart very well over the past few years. We have a $5 million appropriation in again this year, and that will expand the program to another 6,000 to 7,000 pre-Kers, those 4-year-olds. Yeah, you know, it's kind of fun as you go to an Upstart graduation. You'd actually think these young kids got their college, got a doctorate degree because they've done so well. And it's fun to see, but the government funding, I think, as we look at it, is so essential to be able to provide the service to kids.
Senator Escamilla, your thoughts on the role of government?
So I think there is a critical role, clearly for families that are struggling and that are coming again with that disadvantaged component. It's an issue of equity more than anything. It's not equality, but equity. How do we bring that equitable component to the conversation? You bring good programs that are evidence-based, data-driven. And going back to what the president mentioned, when we know that it's working and the data shows that, why not invest on those programs? There's also Head Start programs, right? I mean, so we have the other programs where it's more comprehensive. You have a teacher component. But right now, to put that in 50,000 kids, because we have about 50,000 4-year-olds, that's our estimate. The more we increase those licenses for accessing one program at a time, is making a difference on that child. And I think we need to do more and start, like I said, in prenatal, and they're still, you know, not here yet, but we're investing in that education. At the end is reducing costs when it comes to criminal justice and our education, because many of them end up in special ed, and if we can have intervention at the young age, it really saves us money on special ed in the future as well.
Okay, very important conversation. Appreciate your time during a busy session. Thanks for being here with us this morning.
Great to be with you. Great to have you at the Capitol.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thanks.
Still to come, we are down to the final weeks of this year's legislative session. Our panel weighs in on what to expect coming down the stretch. But first, a bitter battle over abortion in the U.S. Senate. We'll head to Washington for both sides of the heated debate after the break. Some see it as a fast, convenient way to fill out a ballot. Others say it's confusing and outdated. Either way, there's another effort on Utah's Capitol Hill to eliminate straight party voting. The sponsor is hoping this is the year. The straight party option allows a voter to check one box for every partisan race on a ballot. Representative Patrice Arent has been on a crusade to end it in Utah.
I started looking at this issue in 2012 and filed my first bill in 2013. So it's been a project I've worked on for years, and every year I looked at it, fewer and fewer states have this process.
Now, in her final legislative session, the Democratic lawmaker hopes this is the year it crosses the finish line. Arent says it's confusing voters and just doesn't make sense in a day most are voting by mail.
People will check that box and then think they're done. They don't vote for the judges, they don't vote for school board members, they don't vote for the constitutional amendments, and some are confused and think they're supposed to check that box because they're a member of the party. Others check that box thinking they're registered for that party.
Others believe there is no reason to get rid of it. Representative Paul Ray voted against House Bill 27.
If they want to do that as something that they're used to, they've done for a while, and I trust the voter. If they want to make changes down the ticket, they can. If they want to vote straight party, they can do that too. Ray was joined by 25 other representatives in voting no, but that wasn't enough. The bill is now off to the Senate, where Senator Kurt Bramble is sponsoring it, a Republican from a dominantly red district.
That's to my benefit to get the straight party ticket. On the other hand, having to look at the names of our elected officials, members of Congress, members of the legislature, members of the school board, and actually have to decide between this name or that name, it enhances the civic education of the public.
Now, last year, the bill did pass a Senate committee unanimously, but it ran out of time for the full Senate. Arent hopes that the early start this year can help make that difference. Two abortion bills failing to garner enough votes on the U.S. Senate floor after a day of tense debate during the week. Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer has more from the South Carolina senator leading the effort.
These two pieces of legislation are about us as a nation.
Since 2013, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham has made this speech urging Congress to pass his legislation that would make elective abortions illegal after 20 weeks.
At 20 weeks, we know the child can feel pain. The medical science tells us that.
Graham talked about his bill during a visit to the Piedmont Women's Center in South Carolina on Monday. Georgia Senator Kelly Loeffler, a supporter of Graham's bill, says the U.S. is one of 7 countries that don't have a 20-week abortion ban.
While it's disheartening that this type of horrific practice needs congressional action, I am glad that there are common sense pieces of legislation that can address the atrocities of late-term abortion.
Graham's bill made it through the House in previous years when Republicans were in control, but has never passed the Senate. The second bill would require doctors to provide life-saving care to infants that survive an abortion.
To divisive, anti-choice, anti-women, anti-family bills.
New York Senator Chuck Schumer says there are already laws in place to protect children who are born alive.
This is what the Senate Republicans have proposed. Fake, dishonest, extreme legislation that has nothing to do with improving the lives of ordinary Americans.
Graham promises to keep bringing the bills to the floor until they pass. Reporting from Washington, I'm Kelly Meyer.
Still to come, the legislative session is moving a little slower than normal this year. Our panel will get into some of the reasons why after the break. Stay with us.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now for a closer look at the 2020 legislative session with the Inside Utah Politics panel. For that, we head back up to the Capitol with Senator Todd Weiler and Representative Brian King. Gentlemen, it's always great to have you with us. Let's get right into it. 5 weeks into the session, what's your assessment of where we are and where we've gone to this point?
Well, you know, we had budget issues the first little while associated with tax reform and tax reform being repealed. And I think that's still reverberated through the session. I think that there's still questions and issues about how we're going to take limited money, especially in the general fund, which is primarily funded through sales tax, and how we're going to allocate that to the many worthy programs that are asking for more money and new initiatives. And it's going to be a challenge.
And you know, we always have a bottleneck in getting our bills drafted. But this year, this is my 9th session, it's the worst bottleneck because we've had some staff changes and things in our Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel. So just as of last week, half of my bills weren't even drafted yet, which means they're not going to probably get drafted in time.
And that's been noticeable throughout the session as well.
It may not be a bad thing in some ways, because I think it forces some of the legislators to prioritize a little more tightly stuff that they really want to get out.
Let's get back to the budget numbers, though, and Senator, get your thoughts on those. This has shaped up to be a pretty tight appropriations year in some areas.
Yeah, well, in all the general fund, the sales tax areas, we have, I mean, basically for every $12 that we have in the state budget, 10.5 of those dollars can only be spent on education, which means for the surplus, which means we have to run the rest of the state with $1.50, so out of 12.
Okay. Next 2 weeks, well, a week and 4 days, what are you looking for down the stretch?
Well, the thing that we've really got to do and finish up is the budget process. We've had the appropriations subcommittees have all met. They've made their recommendations to the Executive Appropriations Committee, which is the major budget committee that's composed of the leaders of both sides of both chambers in the legislature and the leadership teams of both Republicans and Democrats. So that's going to be something that we meet in the next few days on. The Democrats are putting their own budget together and their list of priorities. We're meeting in the evening. We met last night. We'll meet tonight again with our legislative fiscal analysts. We'll meet Thursday night with legislative fiscal analysts, and we'll come up with our own recommendations and come together with the budget.
And remember, the governor's budget was based on tax reform, which would have given us $300 or $400 million of general fund. Now we have $80 million of general fund. So governor's budget, more so than ever any other year I've been here, is really not helpful. So
I wonder, you brought up the backlog and the bills coming out, but I talked to a lot of people, you know, how's the session going for you? And there's this feel that compared to the last 5 years or so, it's kind of slow this year. Yeah. Do you guys feel that on your end as well?
I think I do. I feel like we're moving at a slower pace through the bills that come up on the House floor. I think I haven't really noticed it in committees so much, but for example, we've seen very few Senate bills in the House, and I don't know what to attribute that to. It's tempting because people don't realize that degree to which the real friction in the legislature is between the House and the Senate, not between Republicans and Democrats. But so I'll resist taking a shot at my colleagues over in the Senate.
Well, day 2 of this legislative session, we repealed tax reform, which we spent the last 9 months working on. So yeah, this session started with a kind of a black cloud, because although people were cheering, you know, the sales tax on food going away, tax reform was designed to try to alleviate a problem, and that problem remains, and that's why we don't have any general fund, very much general fund surplus to spend.
Let's move on to a couple of specific items that are gaining some attention. Let's turn to Proposition 4. There's talk of modifying it through Senator Bramble's bill, or he even admits someone might try to substitute it and repeal it altogether. Yes. Let's start with you. What are we going to see happen with Prop 4?
I think we're on the cusp of seeing a kumbaya, Senator Bramble and Alliance for a Better Utah coming out and holding hands and singing kumbaya that they've reached a deal, because I think everyone understands now there are some things in Prop 4 that are unconstitutional and don't work, and so I think they're very close to reaching an agreement for a compromise bill.
I don't know that I'd agree that everybody understands there's some things that are clearly unconstitutional, but I think what everybody understands is the political reality is that the votes are there. If the Republicans in the legislature choose to vote to repeal Prop 4, the votes could very easily, if not likely, be there. And that's something that Prop 4 proponents want to avoid. So there's an impetus, there's a feeling of a need to compromise on issues that are non-essential to get to something. It's the old idea that half a loaf is better than nothing at all. And so I hope that they can get to the kind of compromise that the senator talks about. I'm hearing hopeful things about that. We still have to wait and see the final product.
And I wouldn't vote to repeal Prop 4 because it passed in my district. Same with Prop 3. I did not vote to repeal that last year because it passed my district. But the things about Prop 4 that bother me the most is they said they're going to steal some of our legislative attorneys and weaponize them against us. That's a clear conflict of interest. They said that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court would have a role in redistricting when the judicial branch has no role except to rule on lawsuits. And so I think those things need to be stripped out.
I do want to point out one thing. I heard the same thing from Senator Vickers on Monday, that it sounds like we're really close to this. Yeah. As of recording, nothing had happened, but by the time this airs, that may have happened. Yeah, I want to point that out for our viewers. I want to also talk to you guys about this notion or this perception that the legislature isn't listening to the people.
What? No.
Touche.
Perfect. I heard you loud and clear, Glenn.
That was awesome. What about that, though? Do we run a risk messing with Prop 4 at all, of going to that? Well, tax reform, both propositions?
Yeah, so let me just put it in context. The people voted for medical marijuana. It's going to be for sale in April, so they're getting that. They voted for Medicaid expansion. We have full Medicaid expansion. They voted for an independent commission. I believe we'll have an independent commission. And so I think a certain segment of the public is jilted in their anger at the legislature. I respect that. I think that segment has grown over the past 2 or 3 years. But overall, I think that the legislature tries to be very responsive to the people. I do. I try.
Do you agree with that, with the changes that have been made recently?
Well, look, I mean, what the senator said about both medical cannabis and about Medicaid expansion is true, but it was over a lot of kicking and screaming on things that, as Democrats, I don't think we felt should have existed on the part of the legislature. And in some instances, Medicaid expansion, for example, it was over the fact we got Medicaid expansion in the way that voters wanted it, in spite of long delays from the Republicans in the legislature, and in spite of the Trump, and because of the Trump administration putting roadblocks in the way of the Republican desires here at the Utah State Legislature. So there's definitely, from our perspective, a degree to which the legislature is not listening. But in the end, I think that you are likely to get, by way of a compromise, an independent commission that's better than what we had before.
You know, what people don't realize is these propositions are written by lobbyists. Prop 3 had several lobbyist poison pills in there with automatic huge increases for hospital reimbursements, things that people didn't realize they were voting for.
Okay, we have about a minute left, so I want to get to one other issue real quick. I'd like to stay on that, but I want to get to this one. When Senator Romney voted to impeach the president, we saw a major reaction here in the state legislature. We saw a censure resolution come out. Recall U.S. Senator actually happened before that, but along those lines. And leadership decided that they wanted to make sure President Trump knew that they appreciate him, so that was in the form of a citation. Your thoughts on how all that played out this session?
Well, the problem from our perspective, of course, is that the citation that was issued, signed by the President and the Speaker, purported to speak on behalf of all legislators. It was not run by us as Democrats. It was not voted on in either chamber. I found out about that citation on Twitter. So we issued our own statement. We've basically run roughshod over our own rules just to speak to an audience of one in Washington, D.C.
I've issued 2 citations in the past week. One was to a student in my district that won a huge scholarship. Another one was for an Eagle Scout. They were authored by me, signed by me and the Senate President. And again, that might look like it's from the whole Senate, but this is how citations are done. And this is done, they don't go to committee, they're not debated on the floor.
Okay, I'm gonna have to end it on that note. Great conversation, always glad to have you guys on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Stay with us, we'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. The presidential primary. Mail-in ballots must be postmarked by tomorrow. Super Tuesday is in 2 days. There are Election Day options available, so make sure to check with your local county clerk for that information. And the final day of the Utah legislative session is Thursday, March 12th. Caucus night for Utah Republicans and Democrats is Tuesday, March 24th. State conventions for both parties are set for Saturday, April 25th. And then the primary election for state races is Tuesday, June 30th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com, or you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Just log on and search Glenn Mills ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your Sunday morning. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.